So you've decided you want to start collecting some video games, but you have no idea where to start. Jose Ortiz here with PetRockMedia.com, and today we're going to tackle that very topic in the next video. Let's take a look. Okay guys, so a lot of times I'm asked what made you want to start collecting video games, or what made you passionate about video games in the first place. Now for me, growing up in the 80s and 90s, I have a very particular place in my heart for video games. As I've answered in one of my previous videos why I love video games, I feel it is a great way to just escape from everyday life and kind of immerse yourself in a great story. Similar to the way people do it with cinema, videos, movies, things like that, gaming for me is that outlet. So collecting made more sense to me just because of the connection I had to particular gaming systems. And that's one of the first questions you need to ask yourself. What type of system do you feel passionate about? And what I mean by that is, are you more of a handheld person? So like the Game Boy Advance, things like that, Game Gear, anything like that? Or you're more of the old school handhelds, the old Tiger systems, like the old pinball games, the Pac-Mans, the Ninja Turtles, things like that. Is that something you're interested in? Or are you more of a home system kind of person? Do you like the Nintendo, Super Nintendo? What was the very first system that ignited your passion for video games? Answer that question and everything else kind of falls into place. Now what you want to start off with is understanding price. Now unfortunately, there are some people out there that will definitely price gouge you if they know you're looking to complete a system or if you're looking to start collecting for a system. So do your homework, do a quick eBay search, do a quick Craigslist search, and see the starting point prices for those particular systems. So for instance, if you're looking to try to collect for the Super Nintendo, first start looking at particular price points for particular video games that you're interested in collecting. Now first things first, Nintendo is going to be pretty pricey to collect for. Take for instance this video game right here. This is Super Mario World. Now you could tell it's in pretty great condition. The pins are in great order, great condition. There's no rust, there's nothing like that. And the artwork is pretty great. Now there's a little smudge right here towards Yoshi's feet and Mario's feet. And that's something that you want to keep in mind with. Now it's not so much for collecting purposes, but if you are in the market to possibly resell, people look for things like that to try to get the price point down. So definitely keep that in mind when you're looking to purchase video games. So first things first, do a quick eBay search, get an idea for what the price point is, so that way you're armed with that knowledge. So as you're going out and about and looking through these things and looking through bins of games, if you're at like a Goodwill or if you're at a garage sale, you kind of get an idea in your mind as to where you should start for the price point. And if it's something that is ridiculously overpriced, then you'll know to move on. And we're gonna get to that here in a bit. Moving on and biting your tongue and closing your wallet and making sure you don't make a purchase. Now, with regards to purchasing, and let's say you're doing it at a local video game store, make sure you ask them if they have a return policy. Now, one of my local video game stores called Game Over Video Games, they have a 14-day return policy. So within 14 days, which is roughly 2 weeks, if I plug in the system and play it, and something happens or it just doesn't fire up, bring it back to them and they will either return something for me for equal or lesser value, or they'll give me store credit. Now one of the negative things about that is that I don't get my money back. However, if I was already investing into that product, they're willing to find me one of equal value or sometimes give me an even better system. So for instance, like a collector's edition of that system in exchange for the one that I'm returning because it's defective or broken. Now they're really good at also checking their things up front, so I haven't run into that, but for you, that's something that you definitely want to ask. Now of course, if you're at a garage sale, you're not going to ask them what their return policy is, but if you're buying from a store, more of a brick and mortar type store like I'm mentioning, then you definitely want to ask if they have any type of return policy. Now you want to start looking at the various types of systems and video games when you're out there collecting. Now what I mean by that is, are there particular collector's editions of that system that may drive up the price? So for instance, I'll give you an example. The Xbox, the original Xbox system. There's a general black Xbox with the green logo on the top, and everything else is pretty much the same. Then they have different color variations of it. They've got a green one that looks almost see-through. That's a Halo edition. Then they have an orange one. That's a special edition as well. So you want to keep an eye out for those things because that could definitely affect the price. Now it can work in your favor because if the price is not being adjusted for that, you can definitely try and pick that up for a steal and have that in your collection. If in fact later on down the road you plan on reselling it, you'll have a special edition which will definitely help in value. Now on with video games. Video games are huge in this department. Special edition video games have been around for a while, so you definitely want to check that out. One of the big things you want to look at for the older games, especially Xbox and PlayStations, they had what's called a greatest hits version. When a video game hit a certain amount of sales, they made a greatest hits version of that. Now that's not necessarily a good thing because some of the original games go for a lot more than the greatest hits versions. So that's something you want to keep in mind also. Just because it says greatest hits doesn't necessarily mean it's worth more. Sometimes the original copy is worth just as much, if not double, because it's not a greatest hits. That game was around before it hit that milestone, so that particular cover is worth a little bit more money. Now also, when it comes to video games, you want to make sure you're thinking about what type of video game condition you're looking for. Not just is the disc clean or does the case look like it's been damaged. On the topic of cases, this video game didn't come with the case. Now a lot of the older games will not come with original box art because of the fact that they were treated so badly, they were taken out of the cart or out of the box and just thrown away. So the box may not always be there. Now another thing with these particular ones, they sell a clear kind of protective case for these things. And a lot of the games came with it. So that's something to think about too. Does it come with that particular protective sleeve right here? Or is the game brand new in box? Or is it closed in box? Sometimes you'll see, especially if you buy online, you'll see the term CIB, which stands for closed in box. This particular version came with a case, came with the game, and came with a manual. So that's another thing you want to pay attention to. Does it come with a manual? This particular one that we purchased here came completely in box, almost mint condition. And if you open the box, the video game will be in there. Perfect artwork. Everything is awesome. And you can see the price right there. Paid $5.99 for that thing. If it'll focus, there you go. You paid $5.99 for this particular video game. Now, granted, it is an NHL game, and I live in Texas, so hockey isn't a huge sport that a lot of us follow down here. But still, it's a great price for a great game that's closed in box. Another thing you want to look at also is the artwork and the original casing. This particular one looks almost flawless. This jacket, this plastic jacket, is it ripped? Is it torn? Funny enough, is the artwork original? Now sometimes, especially if these come aftermarket or illegal burned copies, they will print that jacket artwork, a really nice print on a printer, and then put it in a regular case. You can buy these green cases online also. So it'll look almost new, but it's not authentic and it's not original. So pay attention to that. Open the box, open the thing. You can feel if it's regular paper, if it's more of that real glossy type, you'll be able to tell. Look really closely. Does the artwork look a little bit pixelated? If it does, chances are it's a fake. So keep that in mind when you're out and about looking for video games, because trust me, there's a lot of deception out there and you might find yourself buying a video game that A, doesn't work, or B, is complete counterfeit. Now, another thing you want to think about when you're starting to collect video games is your at-home connections. Remember, a lot of these systems were around when HDMI was not even a thought. So you have to keep in mind, does your TV offer composite or component inputs? Or if not, keep in mind that you'll probably have to buy an adapter to get them to work. Now, I know it sounds funny, but there are some TVs out there, TV manufacturers, that do not offer anything other than HDMI. We have a TV here that has 6 HDMI inputs, and that's it. There's no composite, there's no component, there's no S-video, none of that. So keep that in mind when you start collecting, because the last thing you want to do is go and collect a system, bring it home, and you can't even play it because now you got to go out and try to find a TV that will work with that system. So keep that in mind also. Think about the type of game that you're trying to collect. Now that sounds funny as far as, well, I want a shooter game or I want a sports game. Keep in mind that certain systems and certain companies are more known for particular types of games. Nintendo, they're great storytellers. Obviously with their Zelda games, their Super Mario Worlds, they have great RPG games. Sega, Genesis, was more known for sports games, for fighting games, for things like that. So keep that in mind when you're searching for systems and searching for games. Back then, there wasn't a lot of cross-platform games. Nintendo owned one particular type of game, and Sega owned another. Very rarely did you see a game that cross-platformed back and forth like we kind of do now. Okay, now we're gonna have a very serious discussion that I personally have struggled with from time to time, and that is budgeting. Let that sink in a little bit. Sticking to a budget. Now, I know how hard that's gonna sound because you may find yourself in a situation where you feel torn and kind of feel pulled because you want to purchase a video game, but it's not in your budget. And what I mean by that is when you're going out to start collecting, set a budget, whether it's going to be a lifelong budget for that particular system or a daily budget. Now, what I have personally started doing is setting a daily budget. Today, I plan on spending no more than $40 on retro games, period. Sticking to a budget has allowed me to enjoy a little bit more of the collecting experience. Because the last thing you want to do, show up to your very first store, see a game that you really, really want, and it's $30. So you're thinking, okay, that's within my budget, purchase it. And then you realize, oh my God, I've only got $10 left. And then down the road, you go to another store and there's an even better video game for $30 and you just spent it on another game that you felt really good about, but you much would prefer to have this particular game. So stick to a budget. Remember, most of us have other things outside of video games we need to be responsible for. Rent, food, gas, things like that. You need to make sure you're sticking to your budget. So again, maintaining and sticking to a budget will help you out tremendously. Now, one of the things that I've started doing to help me out also is to kind of put kind of a rainy day fund, if you will, for video games to the side and kind of building that up. And if one day I have a little bit more, telling myself, okay, today's daily budget is not going to be $100. Now I can afford to purchase possibly a system. So that's something to keep in mind. But please stick to a budget, because the last thing you want to do is to have your video game collecting start causing you more personal and financial problems than it was meant to do. And that's to just have fun. Which leads me to my last point. When you're out there collecting, just have fun with it. Okay, video games have brought you inner joy and made you almost feel like a kid again. So collecting for it should feel that much better. Go out there, start reminiscing of remembering playing that particular video game. If you have children, pass that down to them. Take them with you when you're searching for these video games so they can experience finding the game out in the wild, if you will, purchasing it, taking it home, and then just inputting it into the system and it's starting automatically. Sharing that experience, paying it forward with the younger generation so that way they know what it feels like to collect for these older systems and what it felt like to just put in a game, hit the power button, and it automatically starts. None of this updating stuff that we have to go through nowadays with current gen. So again, just have fun with it, exploring other types of video games, exploring other types of systems. Maybe you never owned a Genesis, but now you really want to own one. Purchase one, get a few games for it, and just enjoy it. But that about wraps up this video, guys. I just wanted to do a quick kind of how I go about collecting video games and collecting things in general. All of these topics can pretty much apply to various different types of collecting. So let me know what you think and what you do and maybe special tips and tricks that you'd use when collecting for video games. Leave those down in the comments down below. Give me a thumbs up if you're new to this channel. I really appreciate you stopping by. Maybe you consider subscribing. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that little bell icon next to it so you're notified each and every time I post a video or go live. Once again, guys, this is Jose Ortiz with PetRockMedia.com signing out. Peace.